Welcome back to our second day of training. My name is Sean Rhodes and I will be your trainer today. Before we get started, I do need to go ahead and go over a few different things in our disclaimer. Today's training is designed to instruct in some of the basics of Metastock. We'll be providing some guidelines for using certain features within our software. However, nothing presented in this training is intended as or should be construed to be a recommendation to buy or sell any specific security. The information, software, and techniques presented today should only be used by investors who are aware of the risks inherent in trading. Equa shall hold no liability for any investment decisions based on the use of our software or any trading strategies or any information provided in connection with our company. That said, welcome back to our second day of training. Last week we covered some of the basics of Metastock, from its installation to how to download data using data on demand with local data. This week we'll be going over some of the items we started on last week in a little bit more depth, as well as covering a few new things. We'll be starting off today by going over the basic of smart charts. We will then extensively study charts themselves. We'll be then going over the options available in charts, what we can do to change and adjust, for instance, their colors and their styles. We'll also be going over information about line studies and going into some more depth about indicators, which we started on last week. So as we learned last time, a chart is just a graphical representation of security prices, along with any accompanying indicators and line studies. So in Metastock, a chart is contained within a single window. The window is divided up into one or more inner windows where the prices and indicators can all be plotted. I'm going to go ahead and bring up a window with Metastock now. Give me one moment. Let's go ahead and start by opening up a smart chart. So to do that, I'm going to go to File and down to Open. And if you don't see smart charts already selected down below in the Files of Type box, then go ahead and select that if you're following along. There are some other options. You can also choose whether or not you're looking at history, local data, favorites, or Reuters data link, which is online data, which we went over a bit last time. But for now, it's fine to select either local data or Reuters data link, which either one can show smart charts. For now, I'm going to go ahead and use the data on demand by staying here with Reuters data link. So the first thing we probably want to know is, how do we know what we're looking at is a smart chart? Let's go ahead and open up a smart chart now. I'm just going to go ahead and type in the letters for IBM. And once again, as I mentioned last week, I'm using the end-of-day Reuters version of this program. So while the concepts are all the same with the professional version, the symbols might be slightly different. So if, for instance, you were using Quote Center, you would type in the prefix, for instance, for IBM, it would be US semicolon IBM, and not just IBM. But with Reuters end-of-day service, it doesn't use those prefixes, and that's what I'll be using to demonstrate today. So we'll type in the symbol, we see it come up above, and I'm going to load the smart chart for IBM. So there's a couple of different ways we can know that we're looking at a smart chart. Obviously, the most obvious is we chose Smart Chart when we were opening it up, and that told us what we're looking at. After it's open, however, there's also a few other little clues that are given to you to let you know you're looking at a smart chart. First of which is to look at the name at the top left of the title bar. If you can find any sort of suffix at the end of the name, then you know what you're looking at isn't a smart chart. In this case, for instance, I'm looking at IBM Ordinary, and there is no suffix. So I know, for instance, in this case, that I'm looking at a smart chart. If there was a suffix such as .mwc or .mwl, I might be looking at a more custom chart, or I might be looking at a layout. And we'll go into more depth with those kind of extensions later on. So let's go ahead and switch back now to our PowerPoint and go over some important features about smart charts. The first feature of a smart chart that's important to know is that there can only be one smart chart at one time in a certain data folder. So only one smart chart can exist for each data folder. Second, smart charts save automatically whenever you close them. So whenever you close your smart chart, all of the settings that you've entered into that smart chart will be automatically saved. That's for good or for worse. Next, smart chart files are automatically saved into a folder called MS Smart below the data folder where the security exists. So for instance, if I opened my file from a local folder on my hard drive in Metastock data, say for instance a folder called S&P 500, if in that S&P 500 I open up one of those securities, a new folder in that S&P 500 folder will be created called MS Smart, and that will hold all of the smart charts for that S&P 500 folder. There's no exceptions to that. All the smart charts are always held there. So the next rule is smart charts autosave using the name given to the security when it was created. So when the smart chart is saved into that MS Smart folder, it will be called the name of the security. So if my security's name is Microsoft, the smart chart will always be called Microsoft. So hopefully that you guys understand those beginning basics about smart charts now. In the beginning, when you're starting to use the program, I would highly recommend using smart charts. They're the simplest and easiest to use, and they were put there on purpose to kind of be user-friendly. So, now the difference is that there's also what's called just a regular chart. And I'm going to go ahead and switch now the screen a bit. And this is the difference between charts versus smart charts. Charts, on the other hand, for instance, can have any number of names. So for instance, you can have any number of charts for any security as long as you come up with a unique name. So I could have, 20 charts for IBM instead of just the one smart chart. And each different chart for IBM, I could name something else. I could name them IBM 1, IBM 2, IBM 3, or I could call them Sean's Crazy IBM chart. It doesn't matter as long as it's a unique name. Next, whenever you close a chart, you'll be asked if you want to save any changes. So you get prompted every time you close a chart, do you want to save this? If you say no, it won't save anything for your chart. But unlike smart charts, it doesn't do it automatically. That can be, as I said, a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. Next, charts are saved by default in the charts folder. So instead of being in those MS Smart folders, they're always going to be in the charts folder. And the file path for the charts folder is here listed on the screen. It's the C:\program files, \equus, \metastock. That's where your Metastock program is installed on your computer. And then it's in a subfolder of that called \charts. And all of your charts will be stored in that folder. Also, you have the choice if you want to save them somewhere else. So unlike a smart chart, you can put them anywhere on your hard drive. In the beginning, especially when you're getting used to the program, and if you're not that computer savvy, I would recommend always leaving things in their default location. This is going to help us as support find things for you if you're having some problems. It's also going to help you as customers. If you can't find a specific chart, you at least know it's in that charts folder and not in some random folder on a different drive on your computer. So until you get a little bit more savvy with the program, I would highly recommend leaving things kind of as the default settings. They were kind of created that way on purpose. So because charts don't autosave, if you're not careful, items that you place on your chart can be lost. And this is a concern, as I mentioned, with charts, but not smart charts. So let's go ahead and switch back to Metastock. I'm going to go over a few details with our chart here. To save any chart that you have open, all you have to do is go to File, Save As, and in the Files of Type box, Save As Type down here, you can then simply choose Charts and give it a unique name. When you do that, it will automatically put it in the charts folder, as you see up here in the Save In, and it will be listed here with all these other charts. Then later, So let's go ahead and save this. So we'll call this IBM Chart 1, or we'll just call it IBM Chart. And I'll click Save. And it said it already exists because I've already created this in previous classes, and I'll just say yes. I'm just going to overwrite it. Then I'm going to close my IBM chart. And if I want to open up that unique chart, all I have to do now is go to File, Open, come down to Files of Type, and instead of Smart Charts, I want a chart. It will automatically place me in the last folder I used to open charts, which by default is the Charts folder, and there in the list is my IBM chart. So I select it and I click Open. So saving charts and opening charts is that easy. It's only confusing when you start confusing what a chart is versus what a smart chart is. Now, if you want to open up charts from the menu, you can also open a new chart by going to File, New, Chart, and coming in here and creating a new chart for a specific security. You'll notice, however, the default is to always create these as smart charts. It will not let you change that. So, if you want to create, however, a new security, if you've made a bunch of changes to your chart and you've saved it, or you've closed it and it automatically saved it as a smart chart, but you want to get back to the basic default template and you just want to use that to create something new, you can come back in here to File, New Chart instead of File, Open, and when you open up your chart, you'll just use the security to open it up. It will use the default template to create your security. Then I could then go and save as either a chart, or I could save it as the smart chart and replace my existing smart chart. It's easy to tell, remember, if you're looking at a chart versus a smart chart by just looking at that upper left corner. So right now, since I used File, New, I'm looking at a smart chart. If I close this and open up a chart, I've got an extension, .mwc. Now I know I'm looking at my custom chart of IBM. So that's how you can kind of tell the two apart. So, there are a lot of different chart options available to you in Metastock. I want to go over with you some of the ones that are more broad in their kind of scope. So we're going to start by going over the options available to you in the program itself. So to do that, I'm going to first go to Tools and down to Options. And we're going to go over a few of these tabs to talk about the charting options available here in the settings. And these settings apply kind of across the board to all of the charts. The two tabs we're mostly interested in today are General and Chart Options. Under General, you're going to find a few different categories, the first of which is Workspace. How this works is if you have a check in the item that you have listed there, it's going to be selected. So if I tell you how something works, if it has a check there, it's doing that thing. It's kind of pretty self-explanatory, but just in case. The first option under Workspace is Restore Workspace on Startup. This option means that when you reopen Metastock, any charts that remained open when you had Metastock last closed will automatically reopen. So if I have a check mark here, it will automatically do that. If I close Metastock with charts open, they pop back up when I reopen it next time. Next is Display Status Bar. If you have this selected, it means that the status bar will be shown at the bottom of Metastock. This is the bar where you see down at the bottom left where it says For Help, press F1. This is also going to give you a little bit more information than that under certain circumstances. So right now it's got the default little mention of For Help, press F1. It also gives us some functions on the right. But on some screens it's going to give you the number of things selected and other options, whether or not it's a candlestick or whatnot. So that's what that display status bar does if you have it checked. The Enable Integrated Browser allows you, when you have it selected, to open up an Internet Explorer browser within Metastock. So if you have this checked and you open up a browser within Metastock, it will open the browser as if it was one of the charts. It keeps it within the program. If you don't have this selected, the browser pops up in the background or outside of the program, and you won't be able to see it from within Metastock. I mean, you can kind of put them side by side or whatnot, but it can be useful to some people to have them within the program. The next category is listed Drawing, and this refers to the drawing components within Metastock. The first object here is Confirm Deletion of Objects. So if you have this selected, you're going to get a confirmation window that pops up whenever you delete an object in a Metastock chart. This can be then approved or declined, or you can get a little bit more help about what it is you're deleting. This can be really useful, especially when you're getting used to the program, so you don't accidentally delete things you wanted to keep. But later on, as you become more proficient and you're adding things and deleting them, it might become more of a hassle, and so you might not want that later on because you don't want to confirm it every time you delete something. So once again, just like most of Metastock, it's customizable based on your proficiency and where you're at and what you like. So if you want to have that popping up, put a check there. Next is Return to Select Mode after drawing. This option basically allows you to return to a non-drawing mode after you draw something. So for instance, if I were to draw a trend line, it goes back to my regular mouse pointer as soon as I'm done. If this isn't checked, it stays the drawing mode, and you have to manually go back to the pointer. Otherwise, you continue to draw things every time you click on your chart. So that's up to you whether or not you like that. It might become a hassle if you're drawing lots of trend lines to do that every time, and you might want to turn this on. It's up to you. Next is Symbols. It's a category for just one thing, basically. It allows you to choose whether or not you want mixed case ticker symbols. This provides for uppercase and lowercase symbols, and it's especially good if you're using Canadian stocks or futures or A and B stocks, and it's pretty essential if you're using, for instance, the Quote Center program, which requires a lot of uppercase and lowercase symbols. So if you, however, just use only the US market and you don't want to bother typing in capital letters every time for your 3-digit symbol, it's fine for you to do this and not have that checked. It's totally up to you, however, whether or not you want it selected. For most people, it's probably a pretty good thing to have checked. The next tab we're going to go over is the Chart Options tab. And there's a few more things to go over here, so I'll try to do my best to go over them for you. The first category is Display, and this basically allows you to choose all of these different options here. They're going to work just like the other ones before. So I'm going to go over each of these with you. First is Show All Title Bars. If you have this checked, all the title bars are going to be displayed for your charts. It's an overall thing, so it's going to affect all of your charts in the program. That doesn't mean that you can't go, however, into individual charts and turn off some title bars, but overall it's going to display them. Next is Show All Chart Toolbars. This is once again another display customizable thing. If you want the toolbars to be displayed, which are these items down here on the bottom, if you want those options available, then put a check there. If you don't have that checked, that whole toolbar at the bottom will disappear. Next is Show Chart Tips. You can check this box if you want chart tips to display next to your mouse pointer. It's also sometimes called like the mouse over command. Basically all you have to do is simply position your mouse over a plot or a price bar or an indicator, and as long as you have your mouse motionless for a second or so, a little chart tip will pop up telling you what you're pointing at. That can be useful to some people but distracting to others, so if you want those to come up, put a check mark there. Next is Show Empty Holidays. You put a check if you want the blank space to display on the chart in place of market holidays. So if you actually want those holidays where nothing happened and the market might have been closed to be displayed on the chart, put a check there and it will show up. This option is primarily used by cycle analysts who are interested in maintaining equal time and space relations in their charts so that they don't have any gaps in time. But for other people who don't care about that, they wouldn't need that, and it might actually cause indicator problems by having those spaces there. So the next is show empty weekends. It's pretty much the same thing as show empty holidays. However, it works for the weekends where things are closed. If you want them to still be displayed, you can put a check there, and once again, this is mostly used by psychoanalysts who want that equal time-space relationship. The next option down below is the P and F boxes stay square. You put a check mark in this P and F boxes stay square thing when plotting a point and figure chart, which is what the P and F stand for. The purists to point and figure charting prefer to have exactly square X's and O boxes. However, the advantage of leaving the box unchecked is that the point and figure charts will then utilize the chart space a little bit more efficiently. So if you manually scale the y-axis, however, this option will just completely be ignored because at that point it can't keep it square. So if you're a purist and you don't want to manually adjust your y-axis and you want to leave it always square, you can put a check mark there, and that's what that takes care of for you. Next is the scroll rescales the y-axis. You put a check in this box if you want the y-axis to automatically rescale when moving through the data using the chart scroll bar. So as you go from left to right, it's going to automatically scale your axis on the right to make sure that the chart displayed is actually showing bars and not just it went up 100 and you're only showing the top 50, so you're no longer showing the chart. I highly recommend that one, but there are some instances where it's better to not have it checked, so we give you that option. The next category is data, and that is to ignore weekend data. You can put a check mark in this box if you do not want the weekend data to be displayed on your charts. And in some charts, especially like on, for instance, the Forex market, you have some funny looking charts going on some of the weekends, and if you don't want to include that in your charting, you can choose this option and it will cut that out on your chart. The next is the category for changing security, and there's a few different things I want to show you this, including how this affects the chart. So the first thing I want to do before I go through the options here is I want to show you where the change security features are in Metastock. So let me go ahead and close this for just a second and show you down here at the bottom right hand corner of this chart. You'll have a little left arrow, a little right arrow, and a little box. These are the change security commands. Basically, they allow you to go previous security, next security, and choose security. Also, if you have a chart open and you simply start typing in letters without selecting anything, so for instance if I type in MSFT, the choose security command will automatically open. Now what this is it's the list of securities found wherever you opened your security from. So if you opened your security from a list of 12 favorites, your choose security will just go through that list of 12 favorites. In this instance, I opened this chart from Data on Demand, so it has the entire database of symbols to go through with the next and previous. So when I go over what options are available here in the options menu under chart options, it's referring to changing the security using that different change security feature back and previous. So the first option here under change security is use smart charts. What this is going to do is when you do next security, it's going to go and grab the smart chart for the next security and pull it up. And so that's a useful thing if you want to just go through your favorites, for instance, and show the smart charts for each, which are separate. But we also give you an option here to use the current look of a chart, which is called a template. It's the settings of the chart, to load the next securities. So for instance, maybe I designed a nice little template here and I want all of my securities in my favorites list to be analyzed with that same exact setup. I want the same colors, I want the same indicators, so I choose use chart as template. What that does is it will then make the chart that you're currently looking at the template for the next security or the previous security. It's pretty useful when you do that. The next option here under when you're using the chart as template is keep line studies. If you have this checked, it basically tells the system that you want the line studies to also be transferred from one chart to the next whenever you use those change security commands. For most circumstances, you'll probably want to leave this unchecked because a line study drawn on one security is going to be pretty rarely useful on another security without some adjustments, and so you might want to redraw it. But if you would like them to transfer over directly, just maybe even to remind you that you want a line study there and you need to redraw it, that's a good option. Lastly is change all charts in a layout. You can have this basically checked if you want to use a layout as a multi-chart layout, which we'll be going over in a little bit more depth in class 3. Basically, if you have this selected, it changes every security in the layout to be the next security. It's pretty useful, especially for going through lists of securities and doing an analysis across the board of different time frames and things. So we'll go over that, as I said, in more depth in class 3. So those are the options for changing overall properties of Metastock for charting. So as you can see, there's quite a few of them there, and you can kind of experiment on what works best for you. But you can also modify a chart on an individual chart level. So let's go ahead and close this application properties now, and we'll go ahead and start to look at that. The chart individual properties can be modified in the window called Chart Window Properties. And this dialog can be accessed a few different ways. First of all, it can be accessed by right-clicking on the chart and going to Chart Window Properties. You can also access it by going to Format and going to Chart Window. And either one will bring you to the same Chart Window Properties window. If you do it through the Format window, the chart that is currently selected is the one you're going to get the properties for. So if you have multiple charts open, you want to make sure you are going to then select the chart you want, then go to Format and Chart Window, and you'll get the right thing. Now, under this Chart Windows Properties, we have 3 different tabs. We have Chart Options, Scale Locations, and Title. I'm going to go through each of these different chart options here and basically explain how they work. So under the Chart Options tab, which is the first one we're going to go over, we're talking about the chart options specific only to this chart. So the changes we make here aren't going to apply to all charts. Now, the first option here is to show the chart title bar. If we take that out and click Apply, the title bar showing our IBM company disappeared, as you noticed. So we'll go ahead and put it back and click Apply and bring it back. Next is Show Chart Toolbar. If you don't want this particular toolbar to appear, you take that out, click Apply, and the toolbar at the bottom, including their scrolling option, has disappeared. If we want to put it back, we can put it back and click Apply. Next is Show Inner Window Title Bars. These are the title bars specific to these inner windows. As you can see, I have 2 inner windows currently displayed right now, and this particular option is going to apply across the board. So if I click that and turn off the inner window title bars, both the title bars are going to disappear because I'm looking at the whole chart's properties. So if I want them back, I can bring them back. Next is Show Value in Title Bars. So this is showing us the close and the open and different things for the last bar. Down here we've got the last value for the volume. And if we don't want those to show, we can take them out. If we do, we can bring them back. Next is the Show Inner Window Splitter Bars. It's kind of hard to tell because we just have the 2 inner windows, but there's a little gray bar here between these 2 inner windows. And if for some reason I wanted to somehow merge these 2 inner windows to make them look like one inner window, I could do that by taking out that splitter bar. So I'm going to go ahead and take out the splitter bar, and you can kind of see the subtle difference. But I'm also then going to take away the title bars. And now it looks like one chart, even though these are 2 inner windows. Alright, so now that we're back to the chart window properties and kind of the default settings, I'm going to go next to the Scale Locations tab. The Scale Locations tab has 3 options: the left y-axis, the right y-axis, and the date x-axis. The left y-axis, basically, if you put a check there, is going to display a y-scale on the left. So I'm going to go ahead and put a check mark there and click Apply. And now you can see that the same y-axis, which was on the right, is now also on the left. You can put different things in your y-axis as you plot indicators and things. It will give you that option. And if you want to turn those off, you can do that here in the scale locations. Next is the right y-axis, which is pretty much the same thing. I'll turn off the right axis for a little bit and bring it back. And lastly is the date or x-axis. That's the time frame axis here at the bottom. If I'm looking at minute charts or tick charts or daily charts or weekly charts, it doesn't matter. The x-axis or the time frames are always on the bottom. If I don't want those to display, I can take them off that way. The next tab is the title tab, and this basically allows you to control the title bar of the main chart. The left side is always going to be set. It's not something that lets you change it. It's always going to be the title or name of the chart. So for instance, it's IBM chart.mwc at the current moment. But the center part of the title bar and the right part of the title bar are both options that we can change. So in the center currently we have the last price displayed. We can select this down arrow and choose a lot of different things. We can choose the date range, the periodicity, the symbol. The symbol is the one that I find very, very useful if you start flipping through different securities and you aren't sure exactly what you're looking at. Let's go ahead and change this to the periodicity. And on the right side we have the same options, and I'll change that to the symbol. Once we set those, we can click apply, and you can see the title bar at the top has now changed. The center shows the periodicity and the right shows the symbol. The description section here allows you to write a short description of your chart so that when you're opening it later, you'll have that description to remember this chart. Basically, it's only used in the open dialog so that you can help you find that specific item. So for instance, right here I could type my favorite IBM chart. And then in the future, if I wanted to open this chart, by going to close, I'll save the changes to my chart. File, open, chart, IBM, there's my description right there. And I can open it back up. The next thing I wanted to discuss is the different chart styles that are available in Metastock, ways to change the way the look of the chart is. So there are multiple ways to change the style of the price plot. Price plot's here. Right now we're looking at a bar chart for IBM. The main way you can change the price plot is to double click on it, and that will bring up a dialog for the price plot. You can also select price plot by right-clicking on it and going into the Properties window, which is the same thing. From within this, you can then make some changes and you can actually change the price style. So I can change it from bars to candlesticks, to candle volume, equivolume, line, Kaji, point and figure, Renko, 3-line break. All of these are options for our charts. Let's go ahead and change it to candlesticks. And as you see, we've now changed it. Another option is you can select the price bars, and provided in this quick tool menu down at the bottom left, I have a quick list. I can simply click on that little down arrow and choose a different style. And now I'm down to a line chart. There are also multiple ways to change the color of your plot. You can double click on the price plot. It's basically the same way. Come in here. You can tell it that you want your up color to be, say, green, or your down color to be, say, red, and click apply, and sure enough it will change. You can also, however, do this from the quick list by simply clicking on the price bars, and down below simply clicking on the palette, the color that you want to be displayed. Now the one difference is the palette down below doesn't allow an up color and a down color. It only allows one color. So if you use this quick shortcut down below, it's only going to give you the one color. Now, another thing that's in the chart properties are a couple different options. Let's go ahead and change this to bars, and let's go ahead and have the colors be black and black. That's fine. The next option here is the weight. This is basically the thickness of the lines drawn in Metastock. So it doesn't matter what style you're looking at, it's going to have a thickness. You can change this by just clicking on the down arrow and then changing the weight. If I do that, for instance, my line chart just became this thick thing. Oh, this is my bar chart. I apologize, I forgot I changed it to that. So this is my thick line chart here. And you can see how that obviously will affect the way your chart looks. The next is apply to all prices. What this does is, if you have this checked, it's going to apply the up and down colors to all the different charts, all the different inner windows in your chart. So if I click this here, and I want a green up and a red down, and click apply, it's going to apply this different thing to all of the different price charts in my open window. So you want to be careful when you choose that apply to all price styles, because it's going to do it to everything. So for instance, now if I switch to line, it's keeping it. Or if I switch to Kaji, it's keeping it, the red up, or the red down and the green up. Alright, let's go ahead and switch back to our basic bars again. We'll zoom in a bit so we can kind of see it a little bit better. Now, within an open chart, we have multiple inner windows, and we can have up to 10 inner windows open at any time. The properties of an inner window can also be modified, and they can be modified within the inner window property dialog. You can access this by right-clicking on the chart, going to inner window properties. You can also access this from the format window. As before, the inner window you last selected is the inner window property dialog you'll get. So then you go to Format, Inner Window, and it will bring up the Inner Window Properties dialog. From within the Inner Window Property dialog, we have similar kind of things that we saw in the Chart Window Property dialog, but these particular properties are only going to apply to our currently selected inner window. So in here we have background color. This lets us select a desired background color for our chart. So for instance, if I want a black background, there we have it with my red bars. Or maybe I want a green background. I mean, it's totally up to you. I hope you don't want that bright green background. Next is Show Title Bar. This is going to apply to just the one specific title bar. And it disappears. The value in the title bar again. And also in the inner window, you can select whether or not to use the color of the plot for your title bar window. So for instance, my plot for volume is red, which was something I selected when I plotted my volume. And so is my number up here. If I take that out, it just becomes a gray. If it's selected, it is always going to match the color in my title bar. And lastly, there's the option to apply these settings to all inner windows. So if I want to take away the title bar, and I want to take away the title bar for both, this is a way to kind of go up one level by going apply to all inner windows, and both will disappear. And bring them both back. So let's go ahead now and create a new inner window. There's a few different ways that you can create an inner window. You can go right-click, Inner Window, and click on New, which will create just a blank empty space inner window. Or, when plotting an indicator, say volume, you can drop the volume indicator onto the title bar of your item, and it automatically will place this in a new inner window. You can also do it by going to Window, New Inner Window, which just pops up your new inner window. And as I said, you can have up to 10 inner windows in a given chart. All of these inner windows are also then customizable. You can maximize one inner window by clicking on the Maximize button. You can minimize it or restore it back to the regular setting. You can close it by clicking on the little X. And you can adjust it by bringing your mouse between the two inner windows. This basically changes your mouse pointer into this little scrunchy arrow thing, and you can left click and drag it up and down, and you'll see that the inner windows shrink and expand. You can also move them around. So if I want volume on the top, I could come down to the title bar of volume, left click, and drag it up above my IBM, and it will place it above. Or I could then left click and drag it down if I wanted it below. And if you have multiple inner windows, it's good to kind of play with that so you get used to how they kind of move around. You can maximize them, minimize them, and move them all over the place to make it just the way you want it. So the next thing I wanted to discuss with you are indicators. Now, there are different ways that you can plot indicators, which we went over in our last class. But today I wanted to show you a little bit more detail about the indicators and where to plot them from. And basically some different reasons why you would want to plot some indicators in certain ways while others in other ways. As you know from before, there are two different ways you can plot indicators. From the quick list here, or from the Insert Indicators option from the Insert. When you are plotting different indicators, the scaling becomes very important for those indicators. Certain indicators, like for instance the stochastic indicator, let's go ahead and grab the stochastic oscillator. When you plot it, it is a price-based indicator, so it's always going to be based on the current price bars. If I plot this stochastic oscillator on my chart, it's going to give me some options. It's going to first let me set up the settings for the parameters of my indicator. This is something that's going to change for every single indicator, so I'm not going to go through the specifics of this one. But just so you know, you'll want to understand what those properties mean for what you're looking at. Once you click OK, however, it's going to give you another option. It's going to give you a scaling option. Because the oscillator is scaled on a scale different than my chart, it's going to be very important how I choose to plot my indicator. So for now I'm just going to overlay my indicator without scaling it at all. I'm just going to plop it right on my chart. And we get certain meanings from this. Maybe I'm looking for when the price bars cross certain things and that's when I want to buy, or different things. There's different ways to interpret indicators. I'm going to go ahead and delete that now though, and I'm going to plot it again. This time I'm going to plot it, and I'm going to plot it on the empty space up above by dropping it into the title bar instead of the price bar. You'll notice this time it didn't ask me to scale, and the reason why is because it automatically is going to scale itself how it wants because it's the only thing in the inner window. There are certain indicators that work a lot better when you plot them in their own inner window. This, for instance, is a scale from 0 to 100. The stochastic always is going to be a scale from 0 to 100 when you're using the basic settings. This is going to be completely obsolete if you're wanting to interpret your scale and you have it plotted down below. Because if you plot it without a scaling at all, you might not know when you're looking at 85. So let's go ahead and plot this again, this time without scaling it. This line here does not represent 75. This line represents 20. But because the scaling is different, it might mess me up. Now, if you've become really comfortable with your oscillator and you know it forward and back, and you know this top line always represents 80, and this bottom line always represents 20, you might be able to plot it here, and this might make it easier because it's closer to your price bars. But for some people, it's just important to know that there is a difference. There's some other options when you plot your chart, however. You can also choose to overlay your chart with different options. So I can merge with the scale on the left. This kind of brings this to a 0 to 100. And because now we're on a 0 to 100 scale, we've squished my price bars so small because they only were ranging from 70 to 90. They're right down there, those little teeny bars. Similar, when we merge the scale on the right, it does pretty much the same thing. A little bit better. So we have our price bars shown on the left now, and our oscillators shown on the right. Makes it a little easier to understand. And then you also have the options here for new scales on the left, or new scale on the right. So instead of merging it with the currently existing scale, it merges it. And sometimes that's a good thing. It's just important mostly to know the difference between them and to make sure not to use them incorrectly so that you're incorrectly interpreting your chart. Other types of indicators don't really scale based on anything other than what's currently on the chart. Most plot-based indicators are that way. So if, for instance, I'm plotting a moving average, it's fine plotting that on a chart because it uses the scale actually to represent that. So my moving average here actually does represent this nearly 85 number that it's kind of next to. Some other ones that you want to be careful with are the relative strength index, which definitely has its own scaling, as you can see. And even many others of the price-based indicators. And sometimes, though, it's a little confusing. So, for instance, that relative strength index is a plot-based indicator, so you might think it doesn't. It's just mostly important to know what it is you're using and how it works, and not be confused by the scaling. If you have any questions about how to scale an item, feel free to contact us at support, and we can kind of help you guide the plot so that you're getting the correct scale for what it is you're trying to look at. The next thing I wanted to go over with you real quickly is the indicator builder. This is the first of our 4 power tools, and we'll be going into a lot more depth with the other power tools as we go along. The indicator builder is accessed by clicking here on the little F key. This lets you manage the list of the indicators in your quick list. These are your custom indicators, and at any time you can go in and create or delete any one of these indicators. If you delete them, however, make sure that they're something you don't want, because if they're deleted, they're obviously gone. And we'll be going into more depth about the indicator builder and how to use it in our class 3. Let's go ahead and close that for now. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about are the line studies and toolbars found in Metastock. How to turn on and off the toolbars and how to view the toolbars. So to turn them on and off, you go to View and down to Toolbars. From here you have a list of all of the toolbars that are arranged around Metastock. You have your standard, window, line studies, trend line, etc., etc. We'll go ahead and go over them briefly on how to use them. The first toolbar is the standard toolbar. I just turned it off. As you'll notice, the top part of the toolbar is gone. If we go back to toolbars and click it again, it reappears. So the standard toolbar is basically the toolbar here with the open dialog and some of these other basics like the indicator quick list and our power tools. There are many other toolbars, however, and I'm going to go ahead and show you now that the toolbars all are customizable as is much of Metastock. You can dock and undock all of your toolbars. So this toolbar here on the left that I'm currently looking at, I'm going to left click and I'm going to drag it over here. Basically what I'm doing is undocking it from the left side of the screen and allowing me to basically have it as a free floating window with my program. This is pretty useful if you're using it a lot. It might make it a little bit more easily accessible. It also allows me to customize it. So if I want it on the right side of the screen, I can bring it over here and drop it, and now it's docked on the right side of my screen. Similarly, I can bring it to the bottom. Now it's docked on the bottom of my screen. The trend line toolbar has a few different options. As you can see, it has the pointer, it has the crosshairs, it has the trend lines themselves. Trend lines are pretty basic. You just left click on them and then you use your mouse to draw them on your chart. By the way, to delete any items that you draw on there, you can left click on them and simply click delete on your keyboard. Next is the horizontal line in the trend line toolbar. This draws a horizontal line anywhere on your chart. You just left click. Next is the vertical line. Goes through all your inner windows. It's kind of useful for kind of lining up inner windows from one to another. And next is the semi-log trend line. This is going to allow you to draw trend lines with a little bit different properties. And as you can see, you can come in and kind of set up those properties here. Go ahead and redock this on the left, and we'll grab the next toolbar. Next toolbar is the Line Studies toolbar. Let's go ahead and replot it. View, Toolbars, Line Studies. The Line Studies toolbar is pretty useful because it actually gives you an ability to flip through multiple toolbars. It does the text toolbar and the Fibonacci toolbar, and as you click on these left and right arrows, you can kind of go through these different toolbars. And if you only want one toolbar, it's a good one to have because it has access to those other ones. Let's go ahead and turn on all the toolbars. That might make it a little bit easier, and I'll just bring them out one at a time. Okay. Next toolbar is the Data toolbar. The Data toolbar has a few different options. Has the quadrant lines, which you just left click. You left click somewhere on your screen and drag to the right, and it will draw your quadrants based on your current price bars, and then you let go to draw them. I'm going to hit Control Z, which is a little shortcut to undo what I just did. Next are the Tyrone levels, drawn pretty similarly. You just left click and drag to the right. The trend line by angles. This lets you actually plot exact angles. And if you'll look down in the bottom left hand corner, I'm getting the exact degree I'm drawing on my chart. So right here I'm at 90 degrees, 90.2. Nice thing is, if you can't get it exact, you can plot it, double click on it, and then set your exact value. Next is the speed resistance lines. These are drawn by left clicking. Let's go ahead and try that again. Left clicking and dragging to the right. And as you can see, you can kind of see where they're going to be plotted before you let go, and that's where they'll be plotted. The Andrews Pitchfork is drawn by a little bit different means. You actually left click multiple times, so 1, 2, and 3, and the pitchfork is drawn. The cycle lines, you left click. As you drag away from where you started, the lines expand, and as you bring them back in, the lines contract. It goes the same from the other direction. The probability cone always stays with the price bars. You can kind of see as you go to the right, it's showing you where it's going to draw, and you just left click to draw it. And let's go ahead and redock our data window. Next, let's grab the regression lines. I'm not going to go through these very much other than to just show you how to plot them. There's linear regression, which you left click and drag to the right. And all of these are pretty much the same. There's the graph regression channel, standard error channel, the standard deviation channel, and the equidistant channel. All of them are kind of drawn by left clicking and dragging to the right. Next is the GAN toolbar. This is drawn pretty similarly to the ones we've done with already. The Fibonacci arc is left click. If you're going up, the arc is going to be a downward rainbow. If you're going down, it switches to the up. When you let go, it will be drawn. The Fibonacci fan is the same. You left click and drag and you'll see where those are going to be plotted. The Fibonacci retracements, you left click and drag down into the right, and then let go, and it will give you your percentages. Time zones, they are automatically going to be there, and basically you'll see where they're going to be plotted. You just have to left click to draw them on there. Gann lines, drawn similar to a trend line, but it's pretty preset. You just left click. Similarly for the fan and the grids, they're pretty much drawn as they are shown. Next toolbar is the text toolbar. This lets you draw text onto your chart. If you click on the ABCs, you just click anywhere on your chart and you can type in something. After that, we have the symbol palette. This brings a symbol palette onto your screen that lets you draw little things. So for instance, if you want to have little numbers, up or down arrows, a smiley face, a bull or a bear, it really is up to you. But basically you just left click, draw it on your chart, and it is drawn. The ellipse, the rectangle, and the triangle are all pretty similar to most of the different processors out there that let you draw things. Ellipse, you left click and drag. Rectangle, left click and drag. Triangle is a little bit different. You left click and then left click again, and then the third point where you click is the point of your triangle. So the last menu options that we haven't really gone over, that I wanted to go over briefly with you, are the different menu options up above. Under File, we have New, which we basically went over. It also lets you create a new layout, also lets you create a new security, and open up a new web browser. Open, we've gone over pretty extensively. Close closes the current chart that you have open. Close All closes all of the charts you have open. File Save basically saves the chart or item you have currently selected. Save As lets you change the type of a chart or a layout or whatever it is. It lets you set the type. Save All will save everything as they currently are. Save As HTML saves the current chart as a website. It's a nice way to send a picture of a chart to your friends. Change security. This is another option where you can come to do the next and previous and choose that I showed you at the bottom right hand corner of a chart. Edit layout lets you edit your current layout to add charts or remove charts. Page setup. This is all for printer options. Pretty standard. You guys are probably familiar with that. Send is also a pretty standard option these days. It lets you send it by email or different ways to send your chart somewhere. And down below that are the 4 most recently opened securities. And it's always going to be changing as you open up your securities. A couple options under the Edit command I wanted to go over. The Undo and Redo, those are very useful as you draw through them. That's also where I got my shortcut that I used earlier, the Control-Z, to undo the last thing I did. Redo is just Control-Y, which does it again, basically, after you undo something. And you've got your basic cut and copy and different things like that. Another option that's useful here, that's unique to Metastock, is the Delete All option. This brings up the option to delete all indicators, line studies, symbols, texts, non-base securities, or expert symbols drawn onto a chart. So if you wanted to just get rid of all the little things you've written in notes, you could come in here and choose all text, and it would just delete all of that off your chart. So you don't have to go select each item. It's useful. The next is the option to insert. As you can see, a lot of your toolbars options are here as well. So if you don't know where they are in the toolbars, you can find them here for the most part. As you know, you can also insert indicators, which we've already gone over, and you can insert securities right on top of a chart. So one chart on top of another, basically. Under the Format option, we've gone over most of these, but you might not remember that they're available here as well. You can go into the Selected Objects Properties window, the Chart window overall, the Inner Window Property dialog, the Prices Property dialog to change the style, the X-axis Properties dialog, the Left and Y-axis Properties dialog. It also lets you bring up a data window from here and bring up your indicator quick list from here. Under the Tools, you have basically listed all of your power tools, a link to do online chat with Metastock, basically connects to us so we can help you. The downloader, which lets you collect your end-of-day stuff. It brings up a copy of the downloader running separate from Metastock. Update Symbol Database, which allows you to update your symbol database so that it's always the most current version. So as securities come and go, you'll have the most current. Default Prices and Styles, if you select this, everything kind of goes back to the default for the program. And we've already gone over a little bit of the options. And under Window, you have a few different things as well. You have New Window, which creates a second copy of the current chart that you currently have open. We'll go over that a little bit more next time. Cascade, which basically arranges the windows so that they're in a cascading effect. Column opens the two windows side by side that you have open. Stack, one on top of another. Tile basically arranges all of your securities alphanumerically I should say, and puts them all up so that they evenly are spaced on the chart. If you have Auto Tile selected, which is just an option here, it will automatically tile every time anything's done, so if you move a chart or open a chart, it makes room for it. And Arrange Icons lets you kind of move things around. The New Inner Window we've already gone over, and Arrange Inner Window kind of automatically arranges it so everything's evenly spaced. And lastly, under Window is shown the list of all of the currently open charts. So in summary of what we've gone over, we talked a bit about smart charts and talked a bit about their properties. We went over charts, the options available with charts, how to change the styles, colors, and different settings of charts. We then went over indicators and line studies.